off that flare. We don't know why. But the Coast Guard had no problem finding buoy 7 anyway because they
know where it is.
Oh, they know exactly where it is, so no problem. They headed right over there. But when they got to buoy 7, the Witchcraft was nowhere to be seen. And again, this wasn't hours or days later. This was 19 minutes after they got the radio call. I assume they already had boats on the water, which I'm sure they did. So they were right over there. 19 minutes, and they went all around. Of course, it was dark, but they have powerful searchlights on their boats and stuff, and so
it's what they do.
Yeah, they
search for stuff.
Oh yeah, so they scanned all around looking for signs of the boat, maybe the passengers and life jackets bobbing in the water, all that stuff. They searched pretty thoroughly that night. They found nothing at all. Not even a little piece of garbage or
no debris or anything.
No flotsam at all. Not even a seat cushion. And of course, Dan Burak could not be raised on the radio either. They kept looking, and the search actually went on for a little over a week.
So they didn't just say, "Oh, prank call."
Yeah, they didn't just say, "Oh well, let's go." They hung out.
They actually did search.
They searched the rest.
They're not like your Lyft driver who says, "That guy's not here, I'm going to leave."
Yeah, not like that at all. They kept searching and searching and searching, and eventually they had Coast Guard ships and U.S. Navy ships involved in this search, and also, like I'm thinking about at 6 planes flying over the ocean looking. And which again is close to Miami is very helpful because even if the boat sank, you'd still see it underwater.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that.
So the
deep.
water's pretty clear.
And it's clear. Yeah. It's very clear. Actually, if you get on Google the aerial and go out from Miami Beach to buoy 7, and then continue southeast another mile or so, mile and a half, there's this weird little spot where there's about 8, 9, 10 boats sunk. You can see them underwater there. There's this little cluster of them, and I don't know what it is, if they're derelict boats and the Coast Guard finds them and then just
makes them into habitat or something.
Yeah, they just tow them over to that spot. Maybe they're trying to build an artificial reef or something. I don't know,
but you can actually see it from satellite images.
Oh yeah, you can see them underwater,
which is pretty significant.
Yeah,
but here's the other thing though, is that it shouldn't have sunk because Dan Burak, apparently, according to friends, was very safety conscious
and I guess terrified.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, he was prepared, and he had actually had the boat fitted with extra flotation. I don't know if that's styrofoam or what, but he had extra flotation in that boat. So the boat, even if it had completely swamped and filled with water, it still should have floated.
At least it shouldn't have sunk in 19 minutes.
Yeah, no, definitely it would have sunk a lot slower, but also
it would have never completely submerged.
Yeah, there'd be part of it sticking out of the water.
Right.
Yeah, and big enough part for, I assume, the 2 passengers to cling to, and wave at the Coast Guard.
Yeah, or for the Coast Guard to see.
Yeah,
even
exactly.
Even if they did perish, unfortunately.
Yeah, at least they would have seen the boat, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I could imagine they're clinging to the boat, and suddenly, a bunch of clever sharks just pop up out of the water and snap them off there, carry them away. But
the prequel to Sharknado.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, the search went on. They went as much as 30 miles out to sea, and they went all up and down the coastline from there on the theory that maybe they were caught in a current or something like that. They notified every private boat to be on the alert for this boat as far out as, say, Bimini and everywhere else. And so private owners were looking for the boat too. And not a sign of the boat was ever seen.
Wow.
I know.
Weird.
There's a weird little mystery for you.
Super weird.
Yeah.
So what's the deal?
Well, we got some theories here, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, there are.
Really? We never do that.
Yeah, well, we're going to do it now. This is a special episode. I said, a very special episode.
Very special.
Theory number 1. Of course, our favorite, the triangle. That is the Bermuda Triangle. Triangle got them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, typically...
triangles are pointy and dangerous,
and
so of course it stabbed the boat.
Yeah, they ran right into the corner of it.
Is it a corner on a triangle? I don't think it is.
Yeah. Is it a corner or an apex? Or what?
I think it's an apex. I don't think it's a corner on a triangle.
Oh, okay. Okay. Doesn't really matter.
I have nothing to contribute to this conversation.
Oh, you
so
gave me a look like I was crazy.
No, I'm just waiting for this to be over. I have nothing to contribute.
Yeah, no, that'll be fodder for another episode.
Great.
Yeah. Our mystery this week. What do they call the pointy things on triangles?
Yeah.
Besides pointy things.
Yeah, they call them pointy things.
Yeah.
Okay, but back to our triangle theory. Well, it's not, obviously that is the go-to theory for a lot of people when it comes to this story. But if they really, truly were at buoy 7 and dead in the water, then where the hell did that boat go?
I mean, really, though.
If it wasn't the triangle, right? Yeah, that's when things like space-time portals start making sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course I found theories about the Bermuda Triangle about this case on the web, which lends more credence to it.
You know what I really love about the Bermuda Triangle?
Yeah.
It is anywhere you want it to be in that region of the ocean.
Yeah, definitely. I think
It always
associated
shifts
with
around.
it.
There is no official area that is.
I think there is an official
No, it's
area.
always moving. It's on. Everybody describes it in a slightly different area to fit the disappearances that they need that might
Well-
be on the periphery.
It gets drawn a little differently, but also you see that, it's like I said, boat X disappeared in this location, and it's not actually in the traditional Bermuda Triangle, as long as it's sort of close enough.
It's in the Bermuda Rhombus.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, the trick with supernatural and paranormal whatever we're going to call the Bermuda Triangle,
Yeah.
is that it's not usually as though it is going to just stay 100% within the confines of.
Well, that's true.
Which is just.
Yeah.
It needs to cooperate.
Yeah, geez, stay in the lines, man.
Yeah, I'll let you talk to them, Steve. I'm not going to talk to that triangle. No way.
All right.
Yeah, they scare
Okay,
me.
so
It scares me.
it might be, but we couldn't ever prove one way or another.
Not really. I mean, the only thing that will prove it is if they suddenly pop back into existence in that same spot, like say tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I guess I would say we've got to give the triangle a little bit of credence.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so we'll see if that happens.
Yeah.
So let's move on to our next theory, which is the boat just sank. And again, this is like, I'm not going to give it more than 30 seconds here, because if it went down,
There should have been a bunch of junk floating around.
there should have been stuff floating around. It should be visible just 24, 25 feet down. Of course, another possibility is it sank. It drifted a little bit north and sank in the channel, which is, I think, about 45 feet deep.
But still,
Don't they dredge that thing on a regular basis?
Yeah. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers actually dredges it, so they should.
They would have scraped it up.
They should have found something by this
Yeah.
time. It's been 50 years.
yeah, they definitely should have, right? And
Yeah.
even if they didn't, you would think you would still be able to see it. That's not that deep, still.
Yeah, no, it still isn't tremendously deep. Yeah, but maybe 45 feet would be enough to make it invisible.
Stuff that was, flotation devices and
Yeah.
all the other, what do you call it?
Beer
Flotsam?
cans.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Flotsam?
No, I like flotsam.
Floatsam?
Yeah, I
It
like
floats them
flotsam.
along?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would expect to see something like that.
Yeah. So I mean, there's always a possibility, of course, that it sank deep enough and it's drifted off, but it still hadn't hit bottom yet, so it's still slowly sinking. But it drifts miles away and sinks.
But
I still think we would have stumbled across it at some point.
and that's a
really.
really really quick time for a boat to sink,
It is.
especially one that was as floaty as this one, right?
Yeah. Now again, if the damage to the hull had been so catastrophic that the water was just gushing in, I would think he would have mentioned that.
I
in
think he would have.
radio message.
He would have said, "Actually, it is an emergency."
He would have said, "Yeah, we're going down."
Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't say that. I think he specifically said, "This is not an emergency." I think
I
he wanted
just
to.
won't be able to move.
I think he just wanted to let those guys know eventually I'm going to need a tow, but if there's somebody dying out there, don't ignore them to come
Right.
over and visit me because it's not an emergency. So yeah, it was definitely. I don't think the hull was breached.
Yeah.
But there's another theory out there. Apparently, there was a small storm, like a squall, I guess, that blew in that night and could have actually pushed them out to sea and into the Gulf Stream. They could have been carried away. I don't think it came. I just don't know precisely when it came in. And frankly, in another account that I read of this, the storm did not actually hit until the next day.
Well, furthermore, if the Coast Guard was only 19 minutes away,
Yeah, they would have noticed.
they would have probably noticed there was a storm happening, right?
Oh, they would have noticed. And also, of course, by the way, just because there's a storm doesn't mean your radio stops working.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And if there had
yeah.
been a storm that night, it seems pretty unlikely that somebody would go out to look at the Christmas lights from the water because the storm would be making it hard to see.
Yeah.
Though,
Yeah.
in fairness, as we've seen in Portland today,
Storms
does-
blowing
2
quite
hours
quickly.
ago it was
Yeah.
beautiful, and now it's gale winds and pouring rain.
Yeah, and
But-
at any coast, it's so much more changeable, so much more quickly.
It is.
Yeah.
Miami's a pretty nice spot,
Is it
even
pretty
during this
stable?
time of year. Well, it's
Yeah.
just, it's nicer, it's more tropical. But
Yeah.
But I just maintain that if the Coast Guard arrived and saw, oh, there's a big old storm blowing through here, they would have probably storms don't usually. 19 minutes would be pretty dang quick for a storm to have just blown right through.
Yeah, it really would be. And you'd think they would take note of that, too. It's like, okay, we got this storm, strong winds. They're blowing from the southwest to the northeast. Hey, why don't we go look to the northeast?
Yeah.
They're not that stupid. The Coast Guard actually knows this kind
They
of stuff.
do actually know what's going on.
They know this stuff, yeah. So, okay, let's table that theory. I don't like the storm idea. But here's another one that's maybe possible. Which is, I mean, they were at buoy 7 right next to a shipping lane. So if their boat's dead in the water, maybe they drifted a little bit to the north into the channel. Freighter comes along or some large ship and just tags them and basically drags them out to sea. Yeah.
Gets snagged on it in some way.
Yeah. And so it's conceivable they wind up just sort of speared on the bow of the ship and just off they go. And
you might know this, you might not know this.
probably don't.
Don't you think that you would notice if you ran into a boat on a ship?
Actually, there have been instances where large freighters and tankers and stuff have gotten into port, and then only after they got into port they realize they've got like a small sailboat, on their bow.
Okay.
I mean, it does happen.
And we've talked about this before. There's also unscrupulous people who don't want to admit that they just ran somebody over and whatever litigation might come about.
Yeah.
So they just keep going, knowing that it'll fall off between the port they're leaving and the port they're destined to hit.
Yeah.
It's probably going to come loose.
Yeah, and if it doesn't, you can always stop and send some crew members down there to knock it loose.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is a very busy area, especially around Christmas time. It's like you've seen what the river down here gets like at Christmas when they have the Christmas boats out.
Yeah,
and
there's
stuff.
people everywhere.
And there's people.
They're all over the place and in the
place.
way.
And the same way down in Miami. Apparently, there were a ton of boats out that night on the water looking at the Christmas lights and stuff. In a situation like that, you'd think that any responsible ship owner or ship driver would have at least one crew member stationed on the bow looking for stuff. Right?
Theoretically, yeah.
Theoretically, right.
Yeah.
And of course, Dan Burak had a flare gun. He said he had a flare gun, although he never shot off a flare, so maybe it turns out his flare gun was out of flares. Maybe, I don't know.
Or a dud.
Or duds or something.
Never buy a discounted flare gun.
Yeah.
They're discounted for a reason.
Seems like if he was so safety conscious that he had extra padding in his boat to make sure that it would never sink, he would make sure he had flares.
Probably spare
think?
flares and stuff like that. You would think he would. Yeah. So this one doesn't work. Let's pop it out and put a new one in. I'm sure he had extra ones.
You would think.
So, I mean, and obviously, if he's that safety conscious, you might have had a couple of paddles in there too. So they're drifting into the shipping lane. So, okay, get out the paddles, Padre, and let's start paddling real fast before that boat gets over here.
Yeah.
So, again, I'm not.
Also, a radio.
And also,
he had a working radio. If you saw a ship coming right at you, you could get on the radio and just be like, wait.
Yeah, it's like, hold on
wait.
there.
Or even just back to the Coast Guard and say, actually, it's an emergency now. There's a ship coming at me.
Yeah, and he didn't do that. And also, I mean, even if he had been carried away, you would think that some wreckage would have been left behind, don't you think? I mean,
I do.
Something would have been left behind. So even though this is actually a plausible theory in some ways, it doesn't really entirely fit the bill for me.
So what's next?
So our next theory is they radioed in from thinking they were at buoy 7, but they were maybe at buoy 9 or buoy 13. Maybe they were mistaken. Although the problem with this theory, of course, is
they still should have been found in the search.
They should have turned up sooner or later.
Yeah. There was a massive search.
Yeah. But along those lines, our next theory is that they faked it and they disappeared to start a new life. Because, I mean, after all, they said they were at buoy 7. How do we know they actually were?
Well,
maybe not.
Yes, but it would have been just as easy for them to just motor on out
and not even
bother to make a call.
Well, it actually would have made a lot more sense to motor, or at least pretend to motor way out to sea. It's like to say, oh yeah, we're gonna like go to what's in here, Bermuda,
Havana.
Yeah, I think Bermuda's
the
a little
Bahamas.
closer. Yeah, the
Bahamas.
Oh yeah, I think
right
the Bahamas
there.
are right there. Yeah, I'm confusing.
Oh no, they definitely are.
Yeah. So the Bahamas. So you could say like, yeah, we're gonna motor over to the Bahamas for Christmas, and then you say, oh, you radio in from like halfway in between and say, oh my God, boat's out of control, catching fire or something.
It's only like 70 miles. It's
not that far.
It's so close. But
it is. Yeah.
But again, radioing in doesn't make any sense if your intention is to just flat out disappear.
Well, I mean, radioing in would be could be something like as a way of giving people.
It's a red herring, but it's everything is so close there, and they can tell kind of where your signal is coming from. So to a degree, you can't lie and say you're 100 miles north when you're 100 miles south, because they're gonna be like, that's strange because we picked you up on the southern end. Mm-hmm. So it would be easier just to keep your trap shut and go wherever the hell you were gonna go, and people would just presume that you sank.
Yeah. Or I don't even know if they told. I assume they told people that they were going out.
Yeah, I think so, but I don't know.
If you were really just trying to disappear, why wouldn't you just quietly get on your boat and drive away?
Get on your bike and ride, yeah.
Yeah, I assume that there were people at the house when they left, because otherwise how do we know that Father Horgan was on the boat?
Yeah.
Because I don't think he called the Coast Guard and says, hey, I'm out here with a Catholic priest, my Buoy 7.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what happened, right?
Right.
So I think that there were people who saw them leave, and they bade them farewell.
I don't know. This makes the most sense of all the theories so far to me, to be honest.
Starting a new life?
Yeah. Though I agree, I wouldn't, if it were me, I wouldn't call in, I'd just motor on out of there, but.
Yeah. But it does make a certain amount of sense. The only hitch with this theory is that why do two guys need to leave and start new lives at the same time? That's a weird thing.
Well, it's not.
Unless they were gay or something.
They could have been lovers.
Yeah.
Especially 50 years ago, and one of them being a Catholic priest. If they were lovers, they needed to leave.
They did need to leave town, yeah. So that's entirely plausible. Burak was fairly rich. Maybe he just cashed out and they took a suitcase of cash onto the boat with them and vanished and went to live in Mexico or Bolivia or Portugal or somewhere.
Sounds great to me.
Yeah, that doesn't sound so bad.
No.
There we go.
Problem
solved. Answered.
Yeah,
answered. Solved.
Okay, so we're going to give that one out. There's a few more theories. Well, one more.
I thought we had solved it.
No, not quite. Well, another theory is foul play.
Okay.
Yeah, which could have been. There's a blogger out there named Michelle Merritt who put up an interesting post about this several years ago. And she's got some theories about foul play, which I thought I would bring to our listeners and share with everybody. She said she noted a few interesting facts about crime in Miami Beach at that time. As you obviously all know, then and now it is home to a lot of very rich people, which might attract your criminal types also, right? And so there were some home invasions, robberies that took place. There was one big famous one that took place 2 months before this incident. Another one took place a month after this incident. So her thinking was possibly it was something on the order of, maybe some criminals came busting in and then took them hostage, and then for some reason decided to make their getaway in the boat. That particular one doesn't totally make sense.
Particularly because we just said we think there were people at the house when they left, right?
Yeah, but I don't know. And so this one is but there's other variations on that, which is for example, he was involved in the hotel business in Miami. Maybe he was involved with some shady people, and maybe he, for whatever reason, made the wrong people angry, and so they got rid of him. They took him, and maybe Father Horgan was just collateral damage, and they just took them out to sea and sank the boat or whatever.
Could have been also a crime of opportunity. Somebody comes along and sees a disabled boat. Notices, that's that rich guy that I know about. Offers them a tow. That's why he doesn't set off the flare. And then actually just kidnaps them and scuttles the boat or whatever else.
Yeah, that's possible. Well, you'd think he would have radioed the Coast Guard and said, never mind, but...
You would think.
Unless he was already dead on the deck.
Or the people who kidnapped him were like, oh no, we'll radio them. We'll let them know.
That could be a combination of theories. Maybe he and the father were heading off to start their new life with a suitcase full of cash, and these guys... in this scenario, maybe the Good Samaritans are on board helping them rig for the tow, and then
the not-so-good Samaritans.
Yeah, well, they're Good Samaritans for now, but then suddenly the suitcase of cash pops open, and revealing that there's cash.
Cash and diamonds just flowing everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So our Good Samaritan immediately spins around with a belaying pin and brains them both and shoves their bodies overboard.
Yeah.
And then, or maybe probably took their bodies way out to sea and shoved them.
Yeah, I was going to say, because seems like the bodies would have shown up too. Maybe not.
Yeah. Or back to our home invasion theory. It might be that maybe the word was out that, Dan Burak, super rich guy, has a secret safe at his house. He's got $3 million in cash in. And so because there were no signs of a home invasion in the house itself, as far as I know. But supposing somebody forces his way into the house and just forces him to open the safe, take out the cash, and then make its getaway on the boat. And so that would make sense. Okay, so and again, it doesn't totally make sense to do the whole Buoy 7, radio signal thing.
But you don't know that it was actually him that made the call. It could have been somebody impersonating him.
Yeah,
and then your idea that they're farther out to sea than they really are becomes plausible. I mean, this one is just a hamster wheel.
It is.
You can go round and round and round.
You mean a rabbit hole?
Something like that.
Yeah, say hamsters too. Hamsters are totally allowed. Of course, we don't discriminate, but it's just kind of a rabbit-oriented podcast.
Small furry animals.
Yeah.
Small tails.
I know.
Little rodents.
Yeah.
I don't know. I still kind of like because it's happier ending.
Yeah, it is a happier ending. But there's so many permutations on this whole thing. Another variation on it is that somebody in the family, say maybe for insurance purposes or inheritance purposes, wanted to get rid of him. But again, who knows? There's no evidence for any of this stuff, unfortunately.
There's just no evidence.
There just ain't no evidence. But it's a really intriguing little story, I gotta say. And I agree with you. I like the idea that they just decided to, and maybe they weren't even gay. They just thought, let's go to Bolivia and be Butch Cassidy and Sundance.
Yeah.
It could have been something like that, too.
Yeah.
Who knows? They were bored with Miami.
Yeah.
All right, so that's our story. But if you have any theories, our email. We're taking off. I want to say a special thank you to all of our Stitcher Premium listeners. You guys are awesome. And we'll see you next time.
All right, bye.
Bye, guys.
So long, Rabbit.
Hey everybody, Steve here one last time. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to get more of this kind of bonus content that's available through Stitcher Premium, just go to Stitcher.com/ThinkingSideways and use the promo code SIDEWAYS and you'll get 1 month free when you sign up for the annual plan. You'll also, of course, get access to all the other shows that are on Stitcher as premium content, and you get us 4 days earlier, and you get us without ads. So, if you want to take advantage of that, go to that link, sign up with that code, and enjoy, and we'll talk to you guys on Thursday. Hey guys, Steve here. You are listening to one of our original 26 episodes. If you've listened to any of our new episodes, you're going to notice that we're sounding a little different in these ones.
Yeah, there's a reason for that.
There is.
They've been remastered.
They have been remastered.
Because they had a really annoying hum.
Yeah, I mean, a huge thanks to listener James for doing almost all of the legwork on this thing.
Yeah.
You'll also notice if you had listened to what we're calling the Lost 26 episodes before, and you're re-listening now, the music and sound effects are gone.
Yes, we've gone back to straight audio. So, be warned, we sound a little different today than we do in what you're about to listen to.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Thinking Sideways.
I don't understand.
Does not compute.
You never know.
Insufficient data to formulate a reply.
What?
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hello there. This is, in case you're wondering, Thinking Sideways. We are the people who take on unsolved mysteries and we solve them.
We're the best solvers in the world.
And sometimes, in order to solve them, we have to sort of make stuff up. But no, actually, we try to solve them, but we usually don't succeed. Anyway, my name is Joe.
Oh, I'm Devin.
I'm Steve.
And in this podcast, we're going to tackle our toughest mystery ever, which was, why did anybody ever buy a pet rock? All right.
Oh, it's gonna be one of those nights.
Okay, just kidding. And if you're one of those people, please don't be offended. I'm kidding. All right. What we're actually going to talk about is a little incident that one of our listeners recommended to us, the Dyatlov Pass incident, which happened in Russia in the Ural Mountains back in 1959. It's one of those big mysterious things. It's rocketed around the internet, and of course it was rocketing around before the internet existed, so there was a lot of speculation even way back in the day as to exactly what did in these 9 intrepid ski hikers in Russia. A little background, these guys were, their leader was Igor, I'm not going to try to pronounce his middle name, Igor Dyatlov. He was 23 years old. He was the organizer and leader of the group. And there were 9 other people, one of whom dropped out due to illness, 7 men and 2 women. And they headed off into the northern Urals to a place called the Mountain of the Dead. which of course is...
Oh, that's ominous.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, it's like one of those things. Hey, what do you say? You want to go for a little hike to the Mountain of the Dead? And you're like...
Sounds like fun.
Yeah. What could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? Yeah. No, it's apparently it's actually Dead Mountain in the local dialect of the local natives there. And it doesn't really mean like you're going to die if you're going to go there. It's not quite like Skull Island. Apparently it means that it's kind of a place where nothing's really going on.
Oh.
From their point of view, if you can't go up there and kill animals for food and pelts, then it's really kind of useless. So they called it Dead Mountain because the hunting just wasn't so good. I know. I love Mountain of the Dead and all that stuff.
That was very cool.
Yeah, I know. It is very cool. The expedition was actually to reach a mountain somewhat beyond the Mountain of the Dead, and this was just a little wayside, just a little stopover for the night on their journey. And they were practicing for a more Arctic expedition. They were actually getting a little practice for a serious, like really kick-ass expedition. And it really tells you something about these guys. They must have been really hardy people to go off and just say, hey, this is going to be a little practice run, and then head up a mountainside in deep snow and camp overnight and all this stuff. And they were going to be gone for days.
Was it in the winter time that they did this too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. They actually they left they actually set out in late January.
Oh my goodness.
And they were due to arrive back in about February 11th.
Huh.
And of course they were overdue getting back, but people weren't too alarmed because expeditions like this can be delayed, obviously. And so, but after a while, people started sending out the alarm because these guys had not returned. And so eventually a search party was organized and sent up there. It eventually involved aircraft, helicopters, etc. And they eventually found one of their tents. The tent was in the snow. It was on the hillside about a mile above the tree line on the hillside of this mountain, the Mountain of the Dead, if I didn't mention that before. And, interestingly, the tents had been slashed. They found one tent, and then they found, I believe, another. And that's one of the frustrating things about investigating this thing is like, I don't know how many tents there were. Some refer to just one tent as if they all slept in one giant tent. But looking at the pictures, it doesn't look like any of the tents were big enough for all the entire group. So, so I believe there were 2, 3, 4 tents, but I'm not really sure. It's frustrating. I mean, we'll have to travel to Russia to really find it.
Well, and it is in Soviet Russia during the Cold War era, so a lot of suppressed details that in reports that have eventually surfaced, it's still hit and miss. Things are missing, so it's hard to say.
So
exactly.
I wondered that too when I saw the pictures.
So how long did it take before the rescuers finally found them?
It was about 3 weeks.
Okay.
And they found the tent. They went down. They found footprints radiating away from the tents, heading down the hill.
Footprints, like boot prints, or like footprints?
Footprints. It's again, after several weeks of exposure to weather, it's probably a little hard to tell.
Okay.
But there has been a claim that made that it appeared that from the footprints that some of the people were not wearing shoes.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, it's like, as always, and this is always the case, can't get around the fact that people over the years have inserted their own little weird things into these stories that may not necessarily be true.
Sure.
On the face of it, it appears that they went down the hill following the footprints. The footprints eventually disappeared, but they continued on in that general direction to the tree line. At the tree line, they find a big pine tree that there was a fire under. Well, the fire was obviously burned out at this point, but somebody had built a fire there. There was the branches of the tree had been torn off to about 15 feet up. Some of the accounts of this talk about the sheer panic that these people must have been in because they were running from some incredible horror that scared them out of their tent, made them run down the hillside in their underwear without boots on, and then they tried to scramble up this tree and tore off branches up to 15 feet high. Okay, so they found a few of the bodies there. There were 9 overall. 3 of the bodies they found further up the hillside between the campfire and the tents, and they appeared to be had to have been headed back up towards the tents. The 4 remaining bodies were found in a nearby ravine. Those bodies had suffered quite a bit of trauma. According to Soviet investigators, the cause of death was quote, a compelling natural force, unquote. In other words, their chests have been, a couple of chests have been crushed, skulls cracked, etc.
Gosh.
Yeah. And so that has caused intense speculation about things like, the abominable snowman, Soviet military tests. One theory is that the local natives, I forget the name of them, the local natives were offended that they'd trespassed into their territory, and so they had brutally killed them. One of the bodies, one of the women that was found in the ravine was missing her tongue. So speculated that the same tribesman had cut her tongue out before pushing her into the ravine.
What was the proximity of the ravine to the camp?
To the camp and to the campfire. It's like, so if the camp is up the hillside, then you go straight down the hillside, you find the campfire. If you go left from there, you go like several hundred feet and there's a ravine.
Huh.
Yeah, not far away. The people found in the ravine were wearing pieces of clothing that had obviously been taken off the bodies of their compatriots. It appeared that they died the last of all of them because they were out in the snow in the freezing cold.
Because it was sub-zero.
It was sub-zero. It was sub-zero. And these people, after their friends had died of hypothermia, then they took their clothes, obviously, because they needed to survive, and stumbled off, and God knows exactly what they intended to do. So anyway, other theories. Let's see, there is a condition that when you go into deep hypothermia, you stop thinking correctly, and you do things like taking your clothes off because you think you're too hot, and things like that. So that's another possibility. These people were just disoriented because of that.
Was there any other weirdness about the bodies?
Supposedly, they scanned the clothes for radioactivity, and 3 articles of clothing out of all the articles of clothing in there were radioactive. Now, I'm not really sure. There's been a little debunking about that whole thing, and apparently some people say that the whole radioactivity thing was basically just inserted into the story later, and it would never actually happen. I'm not really, to me, the whole thing about it was as if the clothes if 3 articles of clothing were radioactive, if they had, say, been exposed to radioactivity, then shouldn't
the rest of them have been?
Yeah, shouldn't all their tooth, for example, the fillings in their teeth should be highly radioactive? And so I'm not really sure. And so that leads me to be a little skeptical about the radioactivity thing.
Sure. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember reading about this, and they said that some of the bodies had a weird orange hue to them.
And their hair had gone gray.
Their hair had gone gray, And,
exactly.
I don't know how much of that is just...
If you lay on your sun, I'm not sure what the effects of exposure in and of itself are, but it has been said that they might have been deeply tanned because they were laying in the sun for weeks without their shirts on. So that's quite possibly what it is.
The skin was discolored, not rotting because it's too cold, but discolored.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what the effects of frostbite on your skin would be. If that would discolor your skin also.
Frostbite usually goes like
black.
Black.
Well, if it lasts long enough, but if you die,
if you die before, then it might just discolor you a little bit. So so I'm not really sure. But apparently, some of the family members did say that they were sort of orange colored. They might have just eaten a lot of carrots in the previous week. I don't know.
So what are the theories? Can you really lay them out for us?
Well, the most compelling theory is they went to bed. Nobody knows exactly when they went to sleep, but it appears that this incident that set them down the hillside happened sometime between 7 and 11 o'clock that evening. I'm not sure how anybody managed to extrapolate.
That what they had done is they examined the contents of their stomachs, and they figure... If you're hiking in the day and you're going to make camp before the sun goes down, then at some point you're going to eat
and you're going to
dinner,
and then go to bed.
So if there's less than 8 hours of digestion, then they can kind of give it a time frame.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how I'm guessing they know what the time frame is, because a lot of things that I saw referenced that they looked at their stomach contents.
So anyway, so in the night, they were presumably asleep in their tents or tent. What happened? They heard a noise. Somebody turns on a light, and in the doorway to their tent, there is standing a chupacabra.
You mean the Yeti?
No, a chupacabra.